Are you Invictus? Clint, are you Invictus? Are you Invictus?
What does it mean?
You know, when I started the Invictus Mind podcast, my goal was to unite a bunch of people who had a similar ideology or similar characteristic traits. Invictus means unconquerable. So it's an old Greek word for means unconquerable.
Unconquerable.
Honestly, just be totally honest, it was a new concept to me. I had to Google it when you sent it to me. But yeah, I do my best.
Tell me about what the show, what is your audience looking for? Tell me.
This is your first time here. This is the #1 program dedicated to helping individuals maximize their potential and truly become unconquerable. Here we have discussions about what it takes and what it means to experience and magnify political freedom, financial freedom, and spiritual freedom.
Yes, I would absolutely say that. I'm going to keep getting up, right? And I keep getting up and I keep pushing forward. And that's the type of mindset that you need to have.
I never lose hope. I never lose faith. My mindset has always been, if I want something, I don't give up. So let me tell you what is the #1 issue when it comes to being unconquerable.
Okay.
And the #1 word you have to think about here is not intelligence, not savvy, not strength, none of those things. The #1 thing is resilience.
You know I'm Invictus, come on. All right, I'm Invictus AF.
Well, may I have an initiation question for my tribe?
Okay.
Are you Invictus?
I believe I am.
So yes, I agree. I am Invictus.
I totally agree, man. And I think that if there's anybody on this planet that's unconquerable, it's probably me. I am not the type to take orders, and I am definitely in a position that I can stand up for myself right now. So.
And I was like, no way, I know what that word means now.
Yeah, man, very cool concept for a show.
You didn't ask me if I was Invictus.
Well, hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you back to the show. This, of course, is your host, Mike Corbell. Today, I'm talking to a gentleman I met in the Nomad Network. He's a regular contributor there and has shared many of his thoughts. His knowledge and experience has been a great benefit to me. And although I can't speak for everyone else on the platform, I have invited him on his show to have a discussion about some of the various ways people can make money to better themselves in this uncertain economy that we live in 2022. Now, here on the Invictus Mind, I want to have discussions primarily about what individuals can do to find more freedom. We like to talk about political freedom, spiritual freedom, and financial freedom. And included in that is sometimes ideas about technology and business. Now, this is the first appearance for my guest in the show, so I will let him introduce himself. But I wanted to let everyone know up front that the reason I invited him on this program is because I threw out a challenge to him for us to have this discussion. While I do respect and appreciate much of the content he has been sharing in the Nomad Network, he and I have been at odds at times on the platform, and rather than simply arguing with our keyboards, I wanted to have an open discussion face-to-face. Now, this is not going to be a debate, but rather an open discussion, and we're going to let the audience take it in and decide for themselves what information is useful and what is not. With that being said, my guest today is a business owner. He is a PhD recipient, and he runs a successful practice in translation services for the medical industry. I'd like to welcome Mr. Robert Linderman. How you doing today, Rob?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for the introduction.
So I understand you're a PhD, but do you call yourself doctor or no?
I do. I also, I'm blessed or cursed with 2 doctorates. I'm also an MD. I practiced medicine for about 20 years. I'm the product of an MD PhD program. So, but I never, after fellowship, which is after residency, it's just a way to delay your actually making gainful employment in this world. I went into private practice, and I did that for about 14 years, and then suffered mental and spiritual burnout, and had to resign my license. And it was, and at the same time, I sort of, it was sort of trains colliding on a track. My marriage was also dissolving. My first marriage, very, very bad timing for both of those. So anyway, the way that I sort of rose from the ashes, so to speak, without gilding the lily too much, was to leverage this skills, knowledge, and experience that I did have into medical and scientific editing and writing business, and that's what I called Liberty Medical Communications. So I told your listeners the name deliberately because all of the businesses that I've started, except for my medical practice, all of the businesses I've ever started, I've put the word liberty in the title because of my commitment to principles of self-ownership and private property. And every business that my current wife has ever started, she's named after herself. So when about exactly 1 year ago, our 1 year anniversary is going to be, I guess, Tuesday, we incorporated another business, which was a residential cleaning business because we had just moved to Cape Cod. And every business that she's ever started, she's named after herself. And her last name is Sequeira. So we called it Liberty Sequeira. So now I've got those two things going on. So that's, I wear two hats, and there's often a lot of enormous cognitive confusion that I have. I'll be editing an article about cardiac stents, and a cleaning client will call me, and I'll have to, mentally shifting gears there can be exhausting. So
two industries on polar opposite ends of the world, huh?
Yeah, so I do that too. They do tend to be fairly different. So that's the fairly brief backstory. I have a lot of difficulty explaining to people what I do. I hope that if people are still confused as to what the editing business is, don't worry about it. I'm unable to describe it in fewer than 21 words. I've tried. No, I seriously doubt that any of you can go ahead and plug me, but none of your listeners, I'm confident that none of your listeners would ever need my services, because you're probably not affiliated with the university in Brazil. If any of your listeners are, however, Rob Linderman 1964@gmail.com.
There you go.
Or libertymedicalcommunications.com. And if you live on Cape Cod, never mind. I won't. That's not what this is about.
Right. Well, I know you as Rob rather than doctor, so I hope you don't mind me not calling you doctor. But I understand that you
I said
have an extensive background.
Most people do. In fact, most people who gym people, for example, insist on calling me Dr. Rob just because they think it's fun, and that's fine. But my friends call me Rob, so that works.
Hey, well, 14 years as a private practitioner, and you have extensive knowledge and able to write and edit things. And I won't let you explain that too much, but from what I've been following things you post, I'm just going to ask: Are you fluent in speaking Portuguese? Since,
I speak Brazilian Portuguese.
Okay,
it's what we speak at home. My wife really wants to bone up her English, so she really wants me to speak English to her, but she just speaks Portuguese back to me. So that's what we end up defaulting to. And I may have told you, I'm not really, I can't really call this a business, although it's another one of our side hustles. We have two other side hustles. One is the English teaching. We teach Brazilian Americans in this community where we live in conversational English. And she is also by training and inclination, I would say, as a hairdresser. And please don't tell anyone. We have a salon in our basement, which I think probably violates zoning laws. But since you and I are both, I think you and I and your listeners probably have similar attitudes regarding zoning and occupational licensing and all that sort of thing. So she does that too, and I think that's ultimately what she will do. Now, talking about the side hustle, Liberty Medical Communications really was our main hustle, and I thought that this cleaning business was going to be a side hustle, and they switched seats in about 4 months, and because I had no idea that this business would take off the way that it did, excuse me, and so I'm probably going to scale down the writing and editing business, which I can, and scale up the other one.
Well, I really like the fact that you introduced the word liberty in all your introductions and your businesses. Although in this day and age, that word can lead to many discussions that go out down many different tangents.
What do you mean? What do you mean by liberty? Yeah, I know.
Exactly. And so
Right.
I like to use the word freedom. I think that's a little bit more definitive.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I, what we do have in common is that we met each other through the Nomad Network and the Jason Stapleton program.
Correct.
So now I don't want to make it my business to plug that show every single time I have an interview, but it has been an influence to me, and I've had many of the members of that network onto this podcast. And I just want to throw it out there, Rob. How long have you been listening to Jason Stapleton for?
So he was a guest on Tom Woods' show many years ago, and that's how I first caught on to him. And at the time, Darren was still his co-host, and the topic was still mostly political stuff. And so I started following him. I wasn't buying any of his stuff, but I thought, like we've talked offline about what the elements of a podcast are. I thought he was entertaining. He was informative. I personally like him. And I think I generally align with him in terms of his worldview. So that helped a lot. But as he went through his changes, and some of your listeners may know that the format of his show has changed a couple times now since I've started following him. And I've stuck with him because I like him. And I generally agree with the things he says, and he entertains me. And then there's one other very important thing, and I think it dovetails with the Nomad Network, is that I listen to Jason because he gives me for the kick in the pants, the positive energy and the encouragement, and because kick in the pants has negative overtones, but it was a daily pep talk, and then it became a weekly pep talk, and now it may be becoming a thrice weekly pep talk. I don't know, while he's trying to find out what his format's going to be. And I'll say another thing about Jason. I have, and this is probably going to lead into some of the topic that we'll talk about later. I have encountered folks who do what he does, who are frankly charlatans, and sell their stuff, but really don't have any business selling their stuff, because the stuff they sell is of poor quality. And what really I find attractive about Jason is his honesty. He's an honest guy, and I think that there's something in his constitution which just doesn't allow himself to it doesn't allow him to oversell himself and to oversell the stuff that he sells. A great example, I think, is his trading course. I mean, he comes out and says, he basically, looks at the viewer in the eye and says, "You're going to lose money doing this." And I don't think it's just legal protection. I think that it comes out of honesty, even though he is running the risk of his potential students and clients saying, "Well, I'm out then," but of course they don't. They people stick with it, and I find that rare and refreshing. And I forgive me if Jason listens to your show. I'm not trying to blow smoke at the guy. I don't agree with everything he says or the way that he proceeds, and I'm still not quite sure what's going on with the Nomad Network, and we may get into sort of talking about that too. But it's a great program, and I like it. I mean, I listen to his podcast, and I listen to yours. I confess, I've only got 2 of these and 2 legs and 24 hours in the day, and I can't listen to that many. But I like the entertaining ones and the ones that I generally agree with. And if I must be accused of stepping into an echo chamber, so be it. I just don't have enough time in the day, to listen to Joe Rogan.
Right. I just listened to Joe Rogan and Dr. Peterson's episode yesterday. It was
it's been getting a lot of that one's been getting a lot of heat. I got to tell you, Mike, I'm not going to do it, and not because I don't want to, or I haven't got the time. I just
Well, I've been fortunate enough to listen to many podcasts just because of some of the side hustles I do myself and running various sales calls and my general interest in having a podcast on my own, only because I have a lot of thoughts and I think it would benefit many people to listen to them. So I think that for those who are not familiar with Jason Stapleton, you did a great introduction as to who he is, but he had a show formerly called Wealth, Power, and Influence. And that was as a result of kind of one of his major shifts in his methodology, I guess, in his message, starting more in the political arena. And what I really agreed with that philosophy was that he shied away from the need of actually participating in the political arena. In other words, I used to be an activist myself in politics, and anybody who knows me, if we get into a political discussion and we're just going to go on a tangent, it's going to run 2 or 3 hours, and probably going to disagree a lot. You and I may not, because we share some of the same ideology. But I really like Jason's message about, changing yourself to acquire more freedom in this world rather than trying to use a political channel to do that. And as a result, Jason Stapleton has proven, to me at least, that he is competent as a coach and a mentor. Some of his experience and some of the things he says, like you, I agree. I don't agree with everything, but where he and I do see eye to eye, I think I have a similar background as him. And, I think that it's a great message for people who really want to have freedom in this world, not to just focus on the political arena, because how much can we really do in a political arena anyway? You and I, depending on our level of influence, one of those key words that he uses a lot, how many people can we reach with our political message? Whereas if we take the approach of, okay, we're going to benefit ourselves first, our family, maybe our close connections, our friends, and then of course our network and reach out that way. And I think that's probably one of the truest and easiest ways to achieve freedom in this world for ourselves and everyone else. What do you think about that?
I think it tends to maximize your I agree. I think it tends to maximize your or increase your happiness as well. If you're because politics is designed to disappoint and disappoint you and make you angry and mostly disappointment. I mean, I think that the longer that you live, I think that the more political disappointments that you experience, and then you can choose not to be disappointed if you opt out. As we have done. There's a play by Voltaire called Candide, where at the end of it, after all of the journeys that all of the characters have taken, at the end they all collectively just decide, you know what we're going to do? Just going to tend to our own garden. And sort of the punchline of all of this was, really the way to maximize your one of the ways to maximize your happiness is to tend to your own garden. I mean, it's your garden after all. No one else is going to tend to it. And I think that you and I agree that it's no one else's responsibility to make sure that your garden doesn't get overrun by infestations, or that the people don't that rob you of your flowers. And it's no one else is going to protect and tend to your garden any better. No one's going to look after it better than you. And how liberating is it to accept that responsibility, for your own affairs. Now, I've done a mini sort of experiment, Mike, for like the last 18 months or so. I have just not read anything on Facebook, and I certainly don't watch the news. My life is no different. I don't get angry about this stuff. There are certain magazines also that I used to read that I don't read anymore. And, I don't, that's, I don't think that my life is less rich because of it. Somebody from Sarasota, Florida is calling me, and I'm not going to answer that because you're more important anyway. Before Sarasota, we were talking about, all right, responsibility and turning off politics. I was never politically active, but I have my own political journey has veered all over the map. I was a garden variety leftist statist in the early part of my life, then became a statist conservative before being a libertarian, and then and I don't want to shock or turn off too much of your audience. I'm probably a philosophical anarchist, I think would be the best way. I think practically, I think practically speaking, I think that it would probably be a very bad idea if we woke up tomorrow morning and we lived in an anarcho-capitalist society, because we haven't prepared the institutions to survive such a transition overnight. But I would refer to myself as a philosophical anarchist, not just a libertarian. So how's that for? I have traipsed all over the map, and just from life experience and paying attention and reading and things like that. Who knows? I can't say that I'm going to be an anarchist or even a libertarian for the rest of my life, but there you go.
Well, I think you and I agree on at least that much as far as terminology goes. I would call myself a philosophical anarchist. I like that idea.
Nice.
But, over the last 2 years, as the world has seemed to do a 180 as far as freedom goes and the American way of life, there have been many philosophies that have been called into question, I think. And, I want to give a shout out to Matthew Erickson. Unfortunately, he is no longer co-hosting with Jason Stapleton. I think he gave a good contrast to Jason Stapleton program. But I've spoken to Matthew on this podcast, and I follow a lot of things he says, and I would put him into the camp of a philosophy or a philosopher, which is really where I align too. I was looking for the ideas that will push the needle, right? And I had this conversation with my brother often, because he's what I will call a thinker, and there's a division between thinkers and doers. And I think that was a great contrast. I liked when Wealth, Power, and Influence is on there. I would call Matthew more of a thinker. I mean, I'm sure he does his, in his own right. He is a doer in his own right. He has to run a family. But, Jason is much more of a doer kind of mentality, and Matthew is much more of a thinker. And I kind of fall right in the middle. I like to think about deep topics. I like to have deep philosophical conversations. But I am also a doer, and I have a mentor who is. I think that my mentor, if him and Jason ever had a chance to talk to each other, they would find themselves very much aligned, which is why I really associate with Jason Stapleton, because, my good friend, my mentor has kind of ingrained that doer mentality. You got to get things done for yourself, because you can't just sit around and think all day and expect the world to change.
If I got to tell you, Mike, if I could get paid doing it, I would look out the window and think deep thoughts and write. But no, that's not going to happen. I think I would be a linguist. I would, but I still have to make a living. So but honest to God, figure out some way for us to get, paid to. Theoretical physicists have figured this out. I'm no good at physics though. Theoretical physicists get paid to scribble down equations and look out the window and space out. But I'm not. I didn't get good enough grades in physics, and I can't do. My math got off at an early stop, so I can't do that either. So, well, you said the word that I think is relevant to this conversation, and it's practically speaking, right? So if we're going to shape this conversation into a sensible topic for people to relate to, we have to talk about the practical application that people can do in today's world. One of the reasons why, again, I'll plug the Nomad Network, is I think it's a great place for like-minded people to associate, but they're sharing with each other the things that they're actually doing in their life. Right. Because you can talk on Facebook and Twitter and a million other channels about the philosophy of freedom, but what Jason and again, my mentor has always taught me is, if you want freedom, you need to get that freedom. You need to do the things that'll ensure you having freedom in your life. In other words, wealth, power, and influence, right? Right. Well, my mentor always told me that the more money you have, the more freedom you have. So the question now becomes, well, okay, that's easy enough to say, but how can people make money in this world? And I think that's where I want to take this conversation, Rob, is the different ways people can actually make money so they can actually experience having more freedom in their life. Because at the end of the day, like I said, the more money you have, the more freedom. But often people live in this world, they're conditioned or programmed or indoctrinated, whatever word you want to use, to get that 9 to 5 job, that job.
And I've experienced that that's probably the least secure way to have freedom that you can have. We've experienced this in 2020 when the government just decided we're going to shut down all the non-essential businesses, whatever that means, right? And how many people actually were out of work because they had not prepared to, do something else.
Right. Right. I don't have really. I have to say though, I have no the being employed by somebody else. For me, I have no philosophical objection to, and I would be unwise to say so anyway, because I am an employer, and I would argue that this is as an employer, what I'm engaged in is a mutually beneficial exchange. I exchange with the employees of my cleaning company something that is more valuable to them and less valuable to me, and they do exactly the same thing in reverse. They provide labor, and in exchange for which they get money, and on the other end, I get the labor, and I get the labor, and I get money too. So those are mutually beneficial exchanges. Now, what I think would be the ideal situation would be for us to seek out ways in which we could, that was a scammer who called me, how do you like that? Seek out ways to engage in mutually beneficial interactions with one another, unencumbered by a third party who's going to steal money from us that we are engaging in. I think, Mike, once you start your own business, I learned this. So I incorporated my first company in 2002. So this is 20 years now, and you can't. It's like the first time you get a paycheck and you see the FICA removed. The first time you open a business and you see how much of the money gets ripped off you by individuals who did not work for that money that they took from you, it changes you, man. Right? It changes your attitude, and I think that's why a lot of people become conservative. I think probably really what they mean is that they want to become libertarian. Now, here's where I agree with you about what's happening on the Nomad network. Jason has hit upon, I think, a point that resonates, which is that all of us, no matter who we are or where we come from, have a capacity to develop a skill, knowledge, or experience that we can leverage in this life in a way that was not possible when I'm a little bit older than you are. I tell you, was really not possible when I was a kid or when I was first starting out. And there are folks who are making comfortable livelihoods as podcasters, kind of hoping that for you, as being as recently as just a few years ago, and this is relevant to you, Mike, video production was a complicated and expensive proposition to get into, and that's been blown open, and really good video production, high quality work in lots of different niches, and you're working into one of these niches, is now possible, and people are able to leverage these skills, knowledge, and experience they have and actually make money doing it. What this network does is encouraging people to take that step, which is not the same thing as saying that you shouldn't have, because this could be your 9-to-5 job, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And I hope, like, for instance, I hope you get so big with all of this that you got to hire people to do stuff for you. I even now I subcontract out stuff. I've got web people, and they happen to be in another country. I mean, these guys are in Toronto, right? But the internet allows them to, we found each other, and I like the work that they do. I've got a marketer; she happens to be local. I'm not currently subbing out any other kind of work, but the busier you get, you can hire people, right? Who have their own skills, knowledge, and experience. And this is a slightly different take on what's happened during the pandemic. The this treasure trove of opportunity has been there for some time. What the pandemic in many ways was a nudge, and nudged a lot of people into this who might have already been inclined to do it, and whatever the great resignation is, I don't know what it is. I think that people are starting to find their own sources of value and leveraging them, and they might have done so anyway, but maybe they needed this nudge. And I'm glad for. I mean, I don't mean to be Pollyannish. I'm Pollyannish about practically nothing, but I'll be Pollyannish about this silver lining aspect of the pandemic, which has nudged the economy in this direction. And I hope that the government doesn't figure out some way to screw it up, because they will if they can, right?
Well, that's what their main function is. Rob, so having lived in this world for 44 years now, and my working life has gone on since I was 16. So it's almost 30 years that I've been in the working field, right? Mm-hmm. I've had many jobs, JOB, and there's a cute acronym called Just Over Broke for those who have jobs, right?
Yeah, familiar with it.
And you mentioned that not everybody can be an entrepreneur, and I'm fine with that, right? There are some, and obviously as an employer, I work with people, and we'll discuss what that word employer means, employee, in a second. But I've worked with people who have been employees, and they've been in situations where the boss treats them bad. They don't feel like they get paid enough. They have to call in for having time with their family. If they're sick, they risk, if they don't go to work, they're going to lose that job. And it's just a situation that's very stressful for many people. On top of that, again, just to reiterate, if you have a job, you're at the mercy of your employer. In other words, for whatever reason, if the business doesn't do well, the employer can say, I can't afford this labor anymore. I'm going to have to let you go. You're at the mercy of the government. They can shut you down for whatever reason, it seems like nowadays, right? You're at the mercy of any number of things. And so being an employee, although, you are trading your time for money, and, there's can be a whole economic discussion about that and whether that's exploitation or not, but, you generally are just trading your time for money. As Robert Kiyosaki said, one of the cash flow quadrants is being an employee. And so if you don't have the skills or the capacity to be a business owner, which is on the other side of the cash flow quadrant, you're kind of stuck in that position. And so Jason Stapleton will say, everybody is really an entrepreneur. And what he means by that is that, you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your own finances, your family's finances. If you have a situation at home that you need to attend to, that's kind of the entrepreneur mindset. However, if you are an entrepreneur, you want to make sure that you have more than just one client, right? If you have a business of your own, and I'm sure you can attest to this as a business owner yourself. If you had only one client, what happens if that client, for whatever reason, decides to no longer work with you?
Correct.
Now you're going to be in trouble. Well,
Correct.
Are you more or less at risk being an entrepreneur with one client than you are with a job with essentially a client that you work for?
No, you're pretty much in the same boat.
Right, exactly. So the risk factor to being an entrepreneur, in my mind, is probably, at least if you develop the skills to go down that route, at least you have more options. You find people who've been in the same factory for 20 years, or who've been, a truck driver. And, if that's the only skill set that you have, well, then you're in trouble if anything happens to that job.
Right.
And so being right. Go ahead.
Develop a side hustle. So it's fantastic advice. By the way, there is a certain Pareto principle that is involved in a lot of businesses as well. You may have more than one client, but if you're like me, you have many clients, but you've got a few big ones that you can afford to lose them, but it hurts when you do. Just to completely round this out and to sort of tell you, this is the case in both my businesses right now. There are in 2020 or 20, it doesn't matter. Within the last couple of years, two major clients went away, not because they didn't like my work. They just contract ended. We're done. And I had a lot of other clients, but it just didn't make it up and for it, and that business took a hit. By comparison, it's the same way in our business. We have some, we have a lady who's all we do is clean her bathroom, and then we've got a 16-room mansion in Hyannis. I really don't want to lose the latter, but if we lose the former, that's not going to hurt as much. So just to, you're right. You don't want only one client, but just to know that, for a lot of us, not that we play favorites, there still is in there. And this is a subtlety, which is, we've already lost your audience, and I don't want to make your podcast terribly boring. Let me take issue with one thing that Jason says about, I would amend what he says. Everybody is a potential entrepreneur. I would not say that everybody is an entrepreneur, because words have meaning. And I get what he's saying, but I don't agree. There are you can be you can say, you like, for instance, this garden, you have this garden in your backyard and you tend to it and it's yours and you take ownership over it, but it doesn't make you an entrepreneur unless you're selling the stuff that you're growing, and you have a product and marketing and branding and all that stuff. But so I'd love to sit down, and I'm so glad that Jason is drinking again. By the way, I've known Jason longer. When I first met him, he was sort of emerging from his extremely conservative upbringing. He didn't drink. And he and actually was public about it, about the fact that he didn't drink, not for medical or spiritual reasons, but for cultural reasons. And he started drinking again. So I would love to sit down and have a bourbon with Jason and ask him, like, what does he really mean by this everybody is an entrepreneur thing? Because he clearly is. And I think that he wants to encourage entrepreneurship in us. And if he does, I hope that we would be a little bit more precise with what we mean by entrepreneur, and that may relate to the reason why you invited me on the show, because for me, I want to say that our entrepreneur has one and only one meaning, but there are things that entrepreneur does not mean, and one should not mistake the word for the thing that it signifies, for something that it does not signify.
That's fair enough, and I'm going to ask you to expound on that definition of entrepreneur in just a second here.
Okay,
but I think that what I've discovered in this world is that the opportunities are, you alluded to this before, opportunities are more plentiful these days than probably they've ever been in the last 20 years. And so for somebody to seize an opportunity, maybe I would loosely call that an entrepreneur, but go ahead and expound on your definition of what an entrepreneur is not. And then we can go and talk about the different opportunities that are out there.
Well, an employee is not an entrepreneur.
Okay.
They are individuals who are involved, and I don't like the expression trading time for money because it's too pejorative. There is another way that I think is equally valid to describe it, which is engaged in a mutually beneficial exchange. Uber driver is not this person is not an entrepreneur. What he or she is doing is exchanging something that is more valuable to another person for something that is more valuable to them, right? Yet they have a car and they got someone out there who wants a ride. That person has money. You want money. You want the money more than you need the time that it's going to take to drive that person. And that person needs the ride more than need the money that they're going to give you. It's absolutely beautiful. I can't sing the praises of this system enough. It is an absolutely beautiful example of mutually beneficial exchange. And that's what an employee is, right? They are an individual who is engaged in a mutually beneficial exchange. What they are not doing and what the entrepreneur is doing. And I think the key word in entrepreneurship is risk. Where there is no risk, there is no entrepreneurship. And where there is no risk, there is no gain. An entrepreneur, by definition, has an idea and puts their treasure at risk for the sake of developing this idea, which is going to turn into what usually ends up being something that a product or a service that they sell to someone else. And the people who they employ are involved in these mutual beneficial exchanges with the entrepreneur, but they themselves are not entrepreneurs. Now, they could be entrepreneurs, and I hope they do. Let me tell you, I mean, I am not trying to blow smoke up my own rear end, but the reason why I teach English is not only because it's a mutually beneficial exchange. I get money for doing this, but these individuals come to me because they materially want to improve their circumstances, and there is no way that they're going to do that. These are adult speakers of Portuguese. They are not going to improve their material circumstances in the United States without speaking passable English, and I'm helping them to do that. So it's this form, so that they can start their own cleaning companies, start their own carpentry businesses, start their own landscaping businesses, and that their children, who will speak fluent English, that to me is what's sort of the story of America. Our immigrant forebears. Both sides of my family have already been here for more than 100 years. They all arrived in the 19th century. So we've had boom and bust cycles, but that's generally the way the story goes.
Well, let me share with you. I think I agree with your idea of the word entrepreneur, somebody who puts a risk. Although I would probably include financial risk, not just any risk.
Oh yeah.
We talked about risk before. If you're putting in a financial risk with the intention of marketing or developing an idea, then that would be a definition of an entrepreneur. However, we probably have to condense the idea of mutually beneficial arrangement into a single word that is not an employee, because that employee might fall into that category. But I think there is a distinction between, I'm going to use this example, an Uber driver and an employee. And the one main distinction I will say is the way that taxes are taken. Now, maybe that is not included in the English definition of entrepreneur, but if you are an employee, for example, and you have a W-2, right, your taxes are taken out. We mentioned this earlier, from the government, right? You have that FICA, funds I can't access. However, as a Uber driver, for example, your taxes you're not getting a paycheck. You're getting payment for a service. Okay. So there is a distinction in my mind between an employee with a W-2 and somebody who is a mutually beneficial arrangement person, for lack of a better word right now, in the fact that, as an Uber driver, you can work when you want to. You can provide services for essentially whoever you want. You can deny whatever call comes in, and you don't have to, have your taxes taken out. So this is where, I'm sorry, I got to stop you there. And I know this from personal experience. At the end of every year, Uber sends you a 1099, and you are required to pay taxes on those 1099 earnings. Right. I didn't say that you're not required to take taxes, but the difference is whether you get a paycheck every Friday and you have your taxes automatically taken out, or you have to actually see an accountant and have your taxes calculated. I think there's a distinction in those two types of arrangements. And so, for lack of a better word, I would not classify an Uber driver as an employee, maybe not an entrepreneur, but we need to settle on some kind of terminology, I think. Independent contractor. And actually, we're going to derail our discussion. We're never going to get to what we want to talk about. But this is precisely the issue that has occurred in California and in many other states. Are drivers employees of Uber, or are they independent contractors? And I side with those who would say that these are independent contractors. They do not work for Uber. Uber is a broker who brokers the exchange between the driver and the passenger. They
you could say that they work for themselves, but really what they are is an independent contractor who is offering services and getting paid for it. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Okay, well, great. I'm glad that you mentioned independent contractor, because that's where we're going to go next. So the reason why you and I have gotten together is because we've had sort of a number of exchanges. I am a product of multi-level marketing, network marketing, what have you. And I'm going to just throw out, some of my past experience with that. And then we're going to kind of get into your thoughts and why we probably differ on many different levels. So I was introduced to this concept, this multi-level marketing concept, back in 2006. I was an employee. I had several jobs. I didn't like my jobs. I didn't like my bosses. I didn't feel like I had control of my income or of my time. So when I was introduced to this concept, multi-level marketing, I would have been classified or defined as an independent contractor for a larger firm, happened to be in the financial industry. So your word earlier, Uber being a broker, I actually worked for a broker in the financial sense. I was working for a broker. I was an independent contractor. Now, with that being said, I opened my eyes up to many different possibilities as an independent contractor, right? And so I learned how to control my time, how to control my income, how to essentially work for who I want to work with, but I would never call myself an employee. So I think that was a distinction I wanted to lay out right there, because as an independent contractor with the firm I worked with, I was paid on a 1099. So of course, at the end of the year, I would have to, declare my income and pay my taxes accordingly. But for all the reasons I just mentioned, I think there's a huge distinction between employee and an independent contractor. Now, where you come in, you would say that I would not be an entrepreneur as a member of a multi-level marketing firm. And I think that I have sort of a different opinion when it comes to that, because there have been many times as an independent contractor within that firm, within the multi-level marketing structure, that I have put my own financial, I've had taken many financial risks on my own. Did I come up with the idea for the company? No. So, I think that's where we want to go. So why don't we talk about multi-level marketing itself? That's really what, where we started, why I invited you on the show. And, I want to talk about the benefits, the pros, and then of course, the cons and the negatives.
Sure.
I will start off by saying this: with any industry, Rob, there's going to be bad people, bad players. There's going to be scammers. There's going to be people who misrepresent the opportunity itself, the company itself. And oftentimes that type of person will give the industry itself a bad name, which I will perfectly accept. There's all kinds of people who are trying to take advantage of others, and I've encountered some of these people. But in my opinion, multi-level marketing itself is not a bad business structure. Now, you disagree.
Correct. By the way, there are bad doctors and bad lawyers. I've met many of both. So my first of all, let me explain how this whole journey began. It actually didn't. I did have an MLM experience once. I didn't know what MLM was, so I just want to get that out there. That isn't the source of my animus. Before I tell the story, though, I just wanted to know sort of what the American film censor rating of your program is. I want to be able to know what version of this story I'm allowed to tell on your program. Is it rated PG-13 or is it rated R? Should I tell the PG-13 version?
If you're talking about expletives that come to mind,
no, just adult activities. I'll tell the PG-13. I didn't prepare you for this. So there was a woman who I was very briefly involved with, who gorgeous, really attractive woman, and she reached out to me many years ago when I was involved in another. I only told you about my successful businesses. I didn't tell you about my unsuccessful ones. There was one business that I had just launched, and it was really doing badly. And she reached out to me and said, "Oh, I know some people who can help you." And really, what I was thinking was, I wasn't trying to find help for my business. I thought this was an opportunity to get together with this woman. And I very quickly found out, I mean, this is really, it's not an MLM story. It's a Rob doesn't sometimes think with his brain story. And well, she wasn't really interested in, I learned very quickly, probably about 3 weeks into this, that the shall we say, the romantic piece of this relationship with her wasn't going to happen. And I backed out. And that's the reason why I got involved in that MLM. So I tell that story just because, you know, it has nothing to do with being scammed. I don't feel like I was being scammed. I think that I allowed the lesser angels of my nature to dominate. And that was kind of that was kind of bad on me. Let me tell you how the MLM story really started. And again, now I'm going to totally bore your listeners. So I get on these kicks, and I was watching a bunch of YouTube content from the skeptic community. I actually have a very good friend back from my medical days who is he's a family he's actually a hospitalist, a pediatric hospitalist, but he's an amateur skeptic. And I watch their content. Now there's this one skeptic who I love. His name is his channel is called Genetically Modified Skeptic. I'm not getting any money to plug this guy. And he has, every once in a while, his wife, cute young woman, would appear on his show, and she's got her own kick, and she wanted to start her own YouTube channel, and she started putting out this content. And I thought, all right, she's kind of cute. I'll watch her stuff. And I thought, well, all right, you know, her delivery isn't so great and her production values aren't so great, but I'll listen to some of her stuff. All right. She produced anti-MLM content. I had no idea what an MLM was, even though I had been involved in one. I had no idea what anti-MLM content was, but I started listening to this, and I got dragged into this rabbit hole. And in a way, it was sort of like a red pill moment where your eyes open up and you see something that has always been there, but you just didn't see it because you're paying attention to anything else. There's a very famous psychological video where there are 5 people passing a basketball to each other, and the students are told, count how many times the basketball is passed. And halfway through this video, which can't be longer than 2 minutes long, a guy in a gorilla suit walks right through the group to the even waves. And the teacher asks, how many of you saw the gorilla? Mike, shockingly few people. They're concentrating so hard they don't see the gorilla walk right through the screen. And I tell you, it's not hard to miss. It's not easy. Rather, it's obvious. It's right there. Just wait. If you say just wait for the gorilla. Now, with MLM, it was like there is this huge entity in the American economy among people that I know, not so much in this community as in other parts of the country, that I was never aware of. And I just became fascinated with this. And then simultaneously, I got involved in the Nomad Network. And for reasons that I can probably explain this now, and I don't care if Jason watches the show, he had intimated that this was going to become a kind of a decentralized place where there would be a community that was supportive of actual entrepreneurship. And I thought, oh my God, this is a place that is ripe for MLM recruiting. And if we're really going to, and this is really, we're getting to the bottom line, if we're really going to maximize our own personal knowledge, skills, and experience, one sure way to delay getting to that endpoint is to get into the MLM game for reasons that I'm going to explain. And I decided that I would take it upon myself to put out this content, explaining what MLMs are and explaining the reasons why in general. And I mean all MLMs, and I'm not talking about the bad actors. I'm talking about all of them. Is in general a bad idea for a budding entrepreneur. And now it became the case pretty quickly that I'm not sure Jason's really got his heart in this. So whatever happens to this, I don't know. It's not public. I have no plans to become a member of the anti-MLM community. I just like I got into the skeptic thing and I got into this. I mean, some other kick will replace it. But it's just been you caught me at this stage in the journey. So let me explain at bottom what I think the problem with this is. And it's that mathematically, the structure is set up to be what's the qualifier I should use? Extremely difficult to navigate to in a way that you can succeed at. And we can. I don't know. I see that I'm allowed to share screen. I don't know if you let your viewers share screen, because I can show you what I mean. By definition, in all of these companies, by definition, there must be a substantial number of distributors, representatives, salespeople, call them what you want to, at the bottom. It has to be the case. And these individuals are always at the bottom and must be at the bottom, and they cannot all succeed. And the reason why they cannot make money doing this is because if they all did, we would very quickly run out of people. I mean, very quickly run out of people. So let me take a step back and maybe I'll say something that will surprise you and your viewers, and maybe not. I don't believe that MLMs should be illegal. I don't believe that it is the FTC's responsibility to chase them down. I find the FTC to be essentially the best thing that I can say about them is that they are inept. The worst thing that I can say about them is that they are corrupt, and they are fully in the pocket of the regulatory capture has occurred in the FTC in a large and frightening way. And I don't want them using my tax dollars to decide who gets to stay in business and who doesn't. I don't think MLMs should be illegal. I think fraud should be illegal. And I think that if somebody is defrauded, they have recourse. That's the first thing. The second thing, I actually believe that MLM is a great business model for some, but not for all. Two classes of people. First, those who start them and those who are in the inner circle when they first start them. It's a great way to make money for them. You need to do it by doing some things that in my view are unethical, which is essentially, you know that there are going to be between 50 and 80%. I'm giving generous numbers here. 50 and 80% of those who come into your organization as distributors who are going to lose money or who are not going to succeed. You know that going in, and you may not represent that to them appropriately. However, if you do, let me put it to you this way: if you had a business opportunity meeting with 200 people in it, and you asked one person to stand up and said, okay, this person will succeed, or just use this as a representative. The rest of you probably won't. That is an honest representation, and if they did that, I would be okay with it. There's another class of individuals who are doing very well in the MLM industry, and this is where, and listen carefully, Mike, because this is where you come in. And those are the ancillary wings, branches, if you will, of the MLM industry. The gurus who sell courses in how to recruit, which is essentially what the bulk of these courses are, and those like you, who, I don't know, should I be plugging your bit? I don't know. Should I even talk about your business? But all right, I won't. But what I understand that you're doing is that you found a niche in which you can leverage your skills, knowledge, and experience into kind of a business. Is that okay? I can't even remember if you've talked about this before, so I can. Anyway.
Well, I'll share a little bit about my own experience, but obviously you have quite a few objections. I kind of want to tackle one at a time here, if you don't mind.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the very first one you mentioned was the mathematical equation. Now, you don't need to share your screen or anything, because mathematically, I agree with you. Everybody is never, okay, let me say this in proper English. Not everybody is
double negatives. It's your show.
Okay. Not everybody is going to be successful in multi-level marketing, and you're not going to recruit everybody. I remember this one multi-level marketing company I saw. They had like an advertisement, and on the advertisement, it was like a poster on a wall in their office, and it was "Recruit the Planet." Okay, which really? I thought was cheesy, right? But here's a simple fact. Okay, you mentioned this before. We weren't talking about MLM, but you mentioned the Pareto distribution. And so here's a fact. There's William Price. I believe his name was William Price, but there's something called Price's Law. Okay, which is very similar to the Pareto principle. Now, Price's Law talks about any kind of systematized organization. He said that he said the square root of the total number of people in that organization will contribute to 50% of the total value of that organization.
Oh, I've never heard this one. I'm going to look it up after the show, though. Okay.
So the square root, so if you have 10 people in your organization, the square root of 10 is roughly 3. Okay. 3 people will have 50% of the value to that organization. If you have 100 people in that organization, then 10 people will contribute to 50% of the total value of that organization. And that works across the board. And in fact, I mentioned Jordan Peterson. He had a whole podcast about this where he talked about, if you play Monopoly enough times, you're going to have certain outcomes and one person's going to end up with all the money every single time. You'll just see the distribution of everything, right? So no matter what, if you have an MLM or if you have a business, even in a standard traditional business, you have the people who are going to make money for that business, and you have, your regular employees who are doing whatever they can to just get that paycheck. But Price's Law says that the square root of the total number of people in that organization are going to do 50% of the work. So whether you have a multi-level marketing business or you have a sports franchise or you have a traditional business, you're not going to escape that principle. So you can't have everybody succeed in any business, no matter what the business model is. So I agree with you right there. Now, with that being said, the hope and the opportunity and the chance that people can become into that top tier is going to be different from business to business. And so, yeah, I do agree that not everybody's going to be successful, but the mentors want to try to get people to be successful in that structure for the simple reason as the way I understand most multi-level marketing businesses, and the same is true with my company, is that the mentors have a direct relationship to compensation based on what their teammates bring to the table.
You are correct.
So their job is to inspire and motivate and get their team to bring as much value to the table as possible, because then the mentor will get compensated based on that.
Correct.
So that's the first objection. That I do agree that not everybody's going to be successful in multi-level marketing. That doesn't mean that it's not a great opportunity for the right person. Correct. I think the second thing you said, not everybody's going to be successful because and multi-level marketing is not for everybody. We talked about this earlier when we said, there's just going to be people who are going to be employees, people who are going to be entrepreneurs or independent contractors. And I think that has a lot to do with the capacity of the person itself. Some people do not have the capacity to be an entrepreneur, whether that be, intellectually or time or resources or whatever. So that person may not even have the capacity to be an employee, but nevertheless, not everyone can be successful in any business endeavor.
I have a point that I think we could both agree on.
Okay.
If you're unemployed and you need money, you need to make money. Would you agree that joining an MLM is a bad idea?
If you're an employee and you need to make money.
If you are unemployed,
okay.
I have no money. Let me say, as opposed to I am the spouse of somebody who's got a stable job with benefits. And I'm a stay-at-home mom. Or I'm my spouse is deployed. I've just given you 2 examples of a typical MLM recruitee.
Sure.
But you don't need the money. I might not pat you on the back and say, go for it, girl. On the other hand, if you're a single person and you live alone and you're unemployed, even if you live with your parents, I think if you need money now in the form of a paycheck, that joining an MLM would not be a good idea. We talked about this offline, right? That if you have a job, right, you would be foolish to quit, right? To do your MLM. Now try to translate that person. Instead of having quit their job, they have no job. Right? Is joining an MLM a good or a bad idea for them? They need the money because they gotta eat, right? They gotta.
Right.
Okay.
Let me answer your objection or your question in full here. First, I do agree with you. Okay. If you are unemployed and you need money, I would agree doing a multi-level marketing business full-time is a terrible idea. Now, what I mean by that full-time, every business opportunity MLM person I've ever met has always said, this is not something that you do full-time.
Sorry, I'm not waving at you. I'm waving at my wife. Go ahead.
This is something that you would want to do on a part-time basis.
Correct.
And make sure that you are secure in it. Now, for several reasons. Now, I might give the same advice to somebody who is unemployed, who has no money coming in. Why would you want to start any traditional business? Because, you know, how long does it take to make money in any traditional business? Whether you compare what you're doing to an MLM, because the bottom line is you need to get clients. You need to get clients and you need to sell a service or a product. And so the same would work with any business. If you have no money and you have no clients, you're going to be out of luck really quick if you don't acquire either one.
I would agree if those were the only two alternatives, either join an MLM or be an entrepreneur. There's an elephant in the room, Mike, and that's called gainful employment. Get a job. Okay, people, this 9 to 5 that we have been bashing. If you are unemployed, your alternatives are not MLM or entrepreneurship.
I agree with you.
Okay, so but that's the dichotomy that I believe, the move that I think you made. If you didn't, I will stand corrected. Now here's the catch-22 about having gainful employment and starting an MLM as a side hustle. There is a catch-22. You can do this as a part-time job, but because of the enormous turnover rate, the people that you recruit will drop out, and it is so difficult to ascend this ladder, to build a team under you, to become a master recruiter, motivator, and retainer of a sales force. I think Dave Ramsey describes essentially what participation in an MLM really is. He describes it this way: to do that and be successful and do it part-time is even more difficult. So not only do you have the math against you, you've got the only non-renewable resource against you, which is time. So if you really want to succeed at this, you got to do it full time. But if you're doing it part-time, you can't. So who succeeds in this business is people who don't need the money initially, who have very large social networks, and who are really, really good. And I would argue this may be a point where we disagree, who are already masterful at recruiting, motivating, and retaining a sales force. Can that be taught? On the margins, but I think that this is one of these qualities that some people have and that some people don't. I will admit, I am not one of those people. I think that I have certain gifts, among which are not included the ability to recruit, motivate, and retain a sales force that is required to be successful in an MLM organization, right? So I'm glad that we got to this point, because this catch-22 analogy occurred to me only recently, right? Don't do it if don't do it if you need it for the money, because you're not going to get any money. And if you're going to do it part-time, know that you're already starting out with one hand tied behind your back.
Okay.
Right. The people who are going to be successful at this are the people who can afford to take the gamble and lose.
Well, let me share with you what I agree with you on. Number one is that time is a valuable resource. It's a precious resource, and you cannot get it back once you spend it. So I agree with you on that. Number two, where am I going here? So as far as influence, you're right. multi-level marketing is about influence. If you're going to recruit somebody to an opportunity, you have to have a certain level of influence that can also persuade somebody or influence them to join your organization.
Correct.
So
I agree.
that can be, I mean, as Jason Stapleton does, he's teaching influence, regardless if it's multi-level marketing or for any other endeavor. Influence can be learned. Okay. In my experience, the best mentors in multi-level marketing teach influence. When I came in, I would definitely say I had less influence than I have today because I didn't have that knowledge given to me. It's not given to school. You know, if you're either influential or you're not. And if you're not, you need to learn those skills. Influence is it's not a talent, it's a skill. We can, talk about the difference between talents and skills. Some people are naturally attractive or attracting. Some people are naturally influential, but it's definitely a skill. Would you agree with that much, at least?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a difference between talent and skill. I think what I just argued was that you need the talent, and that the distribution of those talents is not even. There is an uneven distribution of brilliant physicists who are absolutely crap at teaching. It's like, really, how could you, teaching is there's some who are natural teachers, and some are not, and there are some skills that you can learn, but I think that it's like, am I going to really give a bad analogy if I talk about speed? What do they say? Speed can't be, what's it they say in sports? You can't coach speed, or you can't,
Well, I can use Michael Jordan as an example here, because my mentor,
what's he say?
My mentor in the business is like all of 5'1".
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so he's a great businessman, but he'll use a sports analogy saying he'll never be able to dunk a basketball.
Right.
It's just physically impossible for him to do because of his height. You can't teach him to dunk a basketball unless you lower, at a regulation basket height. You can't teach it. So that's not a talent that he has, if you would say that. He can't learn how to dunk and jump as high because it's just a physical impossibility. So yes, there is a difference between a talent and a skill. But salesmanship, influence and salesmanship, and the art of recruiting is a skill, in my opinion. Now, I want to further address this idea, because not only can you learn the art of influence, the art of salesmanship, because that's really what recruiting is. Here's the biggest difference, I think, between maybe it's my company, what I'm doing, and what a number of other multi-level marketing companies do. Mm-hmm. Okay. We like to say that my company is a hybrid. In other words, a person can be very successful financially in my particular industry and not recruit a whole lot of people. Now, that's a big difference when you're talking about a company, because it's based on the value proposition of the product or service that company is offering. Okay. I can throw out any number of companies out there that sell potions, lotions, and pills, right? Mm-hmm. It will take you the same amount of time, energy, and effort to acquire one person in my industry, which is financial services. If I acquire a client to sell insurance to, it takes the time, energy, and effort to acquire that client as it would if I were to sell them, a pill, a health supplement or something like that. The difference is I will make 10 to 20 times more money on that one sale than a different product. So what I'm saying is that it certainly does depend on the type of company that you're in, as far as how much money you'll make off the bat with your salesmanship in multi-level marketing.
Let me ask you a question that I hope you've considered regarding financial services. And I agree that without question, I would have to answer in the affirmative that financial services are a reputable, necessary, and needed product, whereas dirt from a peat bog in Canada that is sold to be consumed, Black Oxygen Organics of blessed memory, they were just shut down by the government of Canada, is not. Mm-hmm. But let me ask you a question, which I hope that you've somehow considered. These are indeed valuable products. They can be sold in a non-MLM context, which would result in, on the one hand, producers earning much more than you're earning in your company, and don't need to be sold in an MLM model at all.
Okay.
So why not sell them in a non-MLM market?
So that's a great question. That's a great question. And, I'm not sure I wanted to necessarily sell you my company on the air, but I want to just explain in brevity as possible. Because I just had a conversation the other day. Absolutely. There are lots of different ways of making money in financial services without being attached to a multi-level marketing structure. We talk about it in the financial services industry based on contract level, right? You get paid a certain contract for the product that you deliver. Some companies have higher contracts than others. What makes my company different is the structure of MLM. And I can prove this offline. We don't have to get into a conversation. Because you're building an agency of people, okay? The spread of having an override of an agency of people, whether I have 5, 10, or 100 or 1,000 people, will ensure that I get way more compensation on the back end than I ever could selling that many people individually. In other words, here's the thing. This is going to the key principle of why somebody would want to be in multi-level marketing to begin with. John Paul Getty said, I'd rather have the efforts of 100 people, 1% of the efforts of 100 people than 100% of the efforts of my own. It comes down to time. When you're in multi-level marketing, you now can leverage the time and effort of multiple people rather than having enough time yourself to make the same compensation.
Sounds good in theory. The problem is this endless need and to spend inordinate amounts of your time recruiting, and you've got to recruit. I mean, I don't want you to air any of your company's dirty laundry on here. I'm just going to speculate that your turnover rate is as high as it is industry wide, or at least that it falls within the range, and that inordinate amounts of your time must be spent in acquiring distributors who, let's face it, Mike, are also your customers. So in a way, it's customer acquisition. I mean, and there is a certain amount. I think that there's a question that neither of us can answer, and I don't expect that you to be able to answer it, but somebody in your company can answer it. If no product or service was sold outside to non-distributors, would your company still be financially viable? For most, I might speculate all MLMs, the answer to that question is yes. So almost all or 100% of MLMs can function as closed systems. In other words, the customers are the distributors, and it would function that way. And to get this spread that you talk about is going to require that you be a master recruiter, and really do this day and night, every day, nights and weekends. Again, I don't want to say that necessarily that I'm a devotee of Dave Ramsey. I know that he his slavish devotion to or opposition to debt of all kinds is a little bit over the top. But the way that he describes this, honestly, I think is spot on. And I think that if the people that you recruit, Mike, are aware of this going in, have at. Go ahead and roll the dice, but please don't do it if you think that you're going to get that six-figure income, because the odds are way stacked against you. And here comes the other part. We didn't talk about this. And I know that the bad apples counter argument is going to come up, but I'm going to counter that bad apples argument right off the bat with the question of incentives. And incentives make the world go round, man. The incentive in multi-level marketing to oversell the opportunity is unavoidable. And because if you don't oversell it, I don't know how you're going to get people to join. But overselling it, to me, is equivalent to misrepresentation, and that gets down to, and I've watched on my journey down this rabbit hole, I have watched a ton of business presentations, and they all begin with flashing money in front of the crowd. All of them do. Every single one of them. And even if it is not explicitly said, folks, the likelihood that you're going to do what I did is very small. The idea still gets in their heads. And that's part of the problem that I have with this. I'm sorry, I've really veered all over the map.
Well, okay, so you mentioned flashing money, and again, I use my mentor because he's just ingrained in my mind. Him and I have become really good friends. But he would say that he actually had a stint in the Amway Corporation. I'll just throw one name out there, right? And he said in Amway, it was the greatest time he ever had, the most fun he ever had at not making money. He said
he had a good time. Yeah, that's funny.
Okay. So I'm not trying to discuss the merits of my particular business or industry, but there is definitely a difference in some companies within the MLM umbrella, if you would. Okay. Now, the other thing is not everybody is incentivized by money. Okay. So you mentioned that, if you're already well-to-do, then this would be a great opportunity because you don't have to worry about making money. Sure. Okay. Some people are motivated by money. Some people like myself are motivated by, I just don't want to work for somebody else, which I guess would incorporate having money there, right? Some people just, I want to be able to work when I want to, with who I want to. Some people would like to develop their own team of people that they're working with. Some people would, so there's many different incentives there. It's not always about making money. Now, at the end of the day, if you go into business for yourself, you want to be able to make money. So what's the incentive of starting a traditional business? Well, I hope to make money. Well, what happens if you suck at that business? What happens if you can't acquire clients in that business? What happens if, you have a bad idea that the market is just not, attracted to? Well, you're not going to make money in that traditional business. So again, it comes down to what the product is, what the service is, what the market demand is. And so I would compare MLM to that other type of business. Now, again, the incentive is, if you're in business for yourself in a traditional business, okay, and you're not particularly motivated by money, what is the greater motivation there? Do you want to solve the world's problems? Do you want to solve a particular market problem? Okay. Why would you have it? I'm not picking on you here, but I'm just asking straight out. Why would you start a cleaning service? Did you do it because you think the world needs to have clean bathrooms? Or did you say, hey, there's a service here that people have in demand that, I could provide service to, I can provide a solution to that problem?
No, the answer is entirely self-interested. I do this because out of complete 100% self-interest. Now, the reason the business is succeeding, January notwithstanding, and I'm going to air that dirty laundry in public on the Nomad Network. The reason this business is succeeding is because we are solving a problem that people need. I'm glad we're solving their problem. Solving their problem is secondary, right? And this is a point actually where we're circling back to Jason, right? This is a reflection of an ethical dollar being made, right? I'm glad. The reason, I want to put it this way, I want to make money. The reason I am making money is because I'm solving a problem, right? And another great YouTuber who I highly recommend, you don't watch his anti-MLM content because it'll make you mad, but he has other videos about, and he's an enormously successful YouTuber named Jain, Jain. I'm spacing on what his first name is. Yeah, that's okay. And he says the key is chase problems. If you can figure out how to solve somebody's problems, you'll be rich. Now, if you have an idea for a business, and it fails, it could fail for a number of reasons. The answer to your question, I think that the simple answer is you dust off and try again. On the other hand, I think what you've got going in front of you right now is an opportunity. There is a need to visually present. I mean, even if it is within the MLM industry, you're seeing a need and you're filling a need. And if it makes you rich, I say, good for you, man. Right. I got it's an ethical dollar made. I got no problem with that. And the only problem I have regarding ethics with those in I say would really be a very, very small percentage of those who are involved in presenting and selling opportunities in the MLM industry, is those who know that for them to succeed, there must be this enormous pool of people at the bottom who are buying the product but are not making any money and go ahead and do it anyway. Or if they are, in there, again, and this is my anarchist sort of way of thinking about things. If they are at peace with that, if they're okay with that, more power to them. I could not do that. The difference between employees and 1099 contract, commission only contractors in MLMs is that at the end of the week, the employees of Liberty Secura get paid for the labor that they provide. They don't need to recruit other house cleaners to compete with them. It would be ridiculous for them to do so. There's a finite number of people and a finite number of houses. This thing works because we are competing successfully because for a variety of reasons, which again, I don't want to derail us, but we have certain differentiators which have given rise to our success in this market. I'm going way. I'm really going all over the map here. Let's see what time it is. It's 4:30. Have we totally bored everybody in your audience at this point, or are we doing okay?
I'm having a good time with this conversation.
Okay, good.
So.
Anyway, just to return to video production and editing, I think you got a great you've got an opportunity here. Maybe it'll succeed, maybe it won't. But just, I don't know, how does this work? There's like something in your psyche when you hear somebody who's got an idea and you think, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I can't do it, or ideal situation, I wish I had thought of that. Uber. But there's just some, it's like that, it's that little spider sense, that goes off and you say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's the kind of thing that I think that you've got going here. Right. And you could parlay this into a nice little business, and who knows, it could spin off other businesses.
Well,
right?
so let's address something about that particularly. Now, as a one-man show, being a videographer and editor, it's one of my side hustles that I just happen to fall into because, the marketing of my financial team, my multi-level marketing, they want to be able to incentivize people to, hey, here's some of the benefits. So that's how I got into that. I just happen to have that experience and that interest because I went to school for that 20 years ago. Now I can become ultra successful by landing some really good clients who pay me, but there's only so many clients I can handle at one time. There's only so much time I can spend editing any particular videos. Okay. If I want to duplicate my income, how am I going to do that? I would have to hire another videographer. I would have to hire another editor. I'd have to hire somebody from marketing to find my client. So I'd have a whole slew of employees. Now, sure, I could sit there and say, well, I'll pay you as an employee $10 an hour to sit here and, categorize all my clips and, whatever. So yeah, I could have
more than 10, please. Sorry, go ahead.
But here's the thing. Going back to Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. Okay. When it comes to leveraging your time, if you're an employee, right, you said you don't like that word, trading time for money, and that's fine. But if you don't work as an employee, you're not making money. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, the other one in the cash flow quadrant was the S category, that's self-employed. Okay. If you're self-employed, let's say you are a plumber. I actually spent a time as a heating and air conditioning contractor, and I worked for myself. If I don't spend my time servicing that client, I don't get paid. As a business owner, I'm going to use McDonald's as a classic example here. McDonald's, people own those franchises, but that franchise is now run by a whole bunch of people. Okay. That business owner at McDonald's probably does not spend his time in the McDonald's flipping hamburgers. He has a bunch of people working for him. Okay, you can call those people employees. Now, in the multi-level marketing structure, sure, I may not have employees, but what I do have is a team of people who are going after their own thing, their own dreams, their own incentives. And if I want to, and this is a practicality for my life, I could walk away, pursue other interests, and still have money coming in. Because
not if you stop recruiting.
No, see,
those guys are going to quit.
Not all of them. Not all of them. Some people are
not all of them, but somebody. You got to have a critical mass. Now, I know that these numbers can be written down, and actually know that number in your particular company is known. On average, how many people you need to recruit in order to get that very small critical number of people who are going to do the hard work of recruiting for you. But for all intents and purposes, the likelihood that you're going to get to that point where you can walk away, where you don't need to be on top of the recruiting, is really unlikely. By comparison to the franchise owner of a McDonald's, they can work there if they like, but what they can be sure of, and what the people who work for him can be sure of, is that every 2 weeks they're going to get a paycheck, and they're going to get either a W-2 or a 1099 at the end of the year. I'm not sure how. Now, what the associates at the bottom level of an MLM cannot rely on is a paycheck. So if they need one, they're in the wrong business.
Okay, well, we've made the distinction. If you're looking for money in terms of you don't have any income coming in, but see, that's not what the incentive is for getting people into an MLM. The incentive is, okay, what are you call it dream building, right? What are the possibility of you actually becoming one of those few who are at the top, who have afforded the luxury of having a team built, getting to that critical mass of people, right? That can happen for any kind of business. So McDonald's, they can get a paycheck, right, every 2 weeks. But what happens when the maintenance on that building falls short? What happens when, the neighborhood goes bad? What happens when the guy who owns the McDonald's doesn't actually, continue to work with the products that the main corporation of McDonald's is marketing? What happens if he doesn't do all that stuff? See, in multi-level marketing, you actually have a team of people who are already incentivized to do that marketing, who are already incentivized to maintain the business model, who are already incentivized to continue to grow. Now, it may happen that some of them are not going to, that's Price's law again. Some of them are not going to make it. Some of them will. Once you reach that critical mass, well, then sure, you can have a legitimate business that will be self-sustaining. And that's true with almost any business.
Would you? Yeah, but there's a couple things points that I would say in response to this. The first is, would you accept if I amend what you say when you say some? If I amended that and said most will not succeed in the sense that they will not make money or they will lose money. I'm not going to get into. I believe that the data showing what the actual numbers of loss, the loss rate and the failure rate are sound. We don't need to argue those. The next thing that I hope we could agree on is that contract salesperson status is not the same as a business. And the equivalence must be made. The distinction is stark, and it must be outlined. You as a distributor, as a representative producer in an MLM do not have a business. Your company is the business. And so you can compare being an MLMer to being in a business all you want, but you this is an expression that you used when we were talking about fruits. One is apples and the other is oranges. You cannot compare being a member of an MLM, being a participant in an MLM, and having a business.
Well, how
they are categorically different.
I would disagree, and this is why
they are different categories.
Okay,
right.
So
who writes? I write the checks in my business, right? Do you?
Okay. No.
All right.
If that's the only distinction you're going to make.
I make all the decisions about the product, about its marketing, about its distribution, about hiring and firing. I own this business.
Mm-hmm.
You're the people that you've recruited. You yourself, the person who recruited you, do not own this business. And it's essential that you understand this distinction. And I think my problem, another one of my problems with this is that the individuals who are recruited into MLMs are told that they are starting their own business. I don't know how it is that they believe this, that this is true, but somehow they are convinced that they have ownership.
Okay, so
let me return to the example of what I'm so sorry, we're screwing up this podcast. Yes, se você fecha a porta, please. Is Black Oxygen Organics, which closed. And one day, everybody who had their own business didn't have their business anymore because it was never their business. Black Oxygen Organics closed, was shut down. So it's essential to and I have no problem with people getting involved in this, just so long as everybody is clear and honest about what it actually is.
Okay, well, let's stop there. So,
okay.
Yes, there is definitely, I agree that words have meaning and words are important. And I'm going to use this example again because I used it, McDonald's. If you are a franchise owner of McDonald's, just clear as day, are you a business owner or not?
You're a franchisee. I would not say it's a different category.
Okay. So now we're talking about different types of categories, and I'm fine with that because at McDonald's, you can't just serve steaks. You can't serve steak and potatoes at McDonald's. You are limited to the menu that the corporate of McDonald's has. So
correct. We agree. We agree. You're not the business owner.
Okay. So if you are saying that you are not owning a business in MLM in that sense, then yes, we agree. However, in my experience, people who are successful, at least in my company, they run their own office. So they are in charge of all the operation expenses of that office, all the overhead of that office, right? The rent and the utilities and all that stuff.
True.
Okay. They get to hire and work with whoever they want. They essentially can terminate people. You've made that distinction in your content before, if they want to. Okay. They are not allowed to come up with a new product that the main business owner or the corporate has said, this is what you have. So in that regard, it's the same thing as a franchisee. Now, multi-level marketing and franchisees are different categories,
almost
the same as business owners. And
almost. We're moving a little closer here. Keep going.
Okay.
I got.
And so you, as a independent contractor, you are also in charge of your own marketing. If you don't hire the people who market the products, then neither you nor anybody else in that whole organization are going to make any money. So you are exclusive to marketing that. So your own efforts have to be made. Okay. Now, a McDonald's, what differentiates that from McDonald's is the name on the building is McDonald's. People already know what McDonald's is.
I think that we already agreed, Mike.
You have to do more marketing.
I think we already agreed that a franchise, that the owner of a franchise is not a business owner.
Okay. So what we're talking about, we're basically talking about semantics here. The difference between a franchisee and a business and a true entrepreneur and an independent contractor,
right, are all different categories.
So if we're going to argue about semantics, then I agree with you. They are different categories.
Right.
But where I think you and I, this is the biggest distinction that I think, and the biggest objection I have to some of the content you've been putting, especially on a Nomad network, is because in my estimation, if somebody has the motivation, has the incentive desire to become an independent contractor, understands the structure of the business, is coached and mentored properly, and has acquired the skills of influence and salesmanship. When you say that people, especially in a Nomad network, who are looking for that alternative to having an employment situation, where you will dissuade them from joining multi-level marketing. And I think, why? Because I think everything a person wants
because their likelihood of success is I tend to be hyperbolic. I don't want to say infinitesimally small, but it's very small, and that their skills, knowledge, and experience is better put to the expression of a true entrepreneurial spirit, not to be forgive me, Mike, lied to and told that they are an entrepreneur when in fact they are a 1099 contract employee who's commission only and is only going to succeed if they recruit and let's face it, it has to be enormous numbers of people underneath them before they succeed. Here's one place where we were beginning to converge and agree. If you build an organization that is so large that really you must incorporate in order to do business, then yes. So I have Rob Linderman, LLC, and it happens that the majority of what my business is engaged in is selling this product or service for an MLM. Then fine. I still doesn't really necessarily, I have my own, at that point, I have my own business. But what I still don't have is any of those control elements that we talked about before. Product, marketing, branding, hiring and firing. I mean, unless you hire, you have to hire a secretary. You have expenses and rent and that, but that comes out of your income, which is 1099 income. Now, I got nothing about 100% of Liberty Medical Communications income is 1099. No, it's not. Forgive me. It's not 1099. It's not 100% of 1099 income, but I do a lot of subcontract work. So a certain percentage is so I got no problem with income being 1099 income, but my name's on the masthead, right? I am responsible for everything else that has to do with the business here. So as long as I would hope that the MLM industry would move to the point where, as a group, all of them would tell the truth to potential recruits and to actual recruits about what the nature of their job is, and it is a job, right? And not to keep calling it entrepreneurship and a business, and you've got to run it like a business, because in no meaningful sense it is.
Okay. Well, I want to get this. We've been going about 90 minutes here, so I want to throw out one more concept out there, and okay. I think this is probably the deciding factor as to somebody whether they want to go the MLM route or have their own business in the sense that you're defining that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that is leverage. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, yes, you have a business and you are responsible to ultimately the guy at the top. You have to cut the checks to the employees, but you also have to do the marketing. You also have to do the advertising. You also have to do client acquisition. So all that stuff is your responsibility. The risk that somebody can handle all that responsibility on their own, whether they can leverage a team of people to do that on their behalf, that is an important distinction. And I think that is that is what attracted me to this business model. I can run my videography business all I want, but then I have to have responsibility for all that other stuff. Whereas if I actually leverage my leadership, if I leverage another successful producer on my team, if I leverage anybody I have underneath my hierarchy to have client acquisition, all that stuff, I am not 100% responsible for. So am I a business owner in a truest sense? Sure, definitionally, maybe not. But the incentive structure for me to be able to leverage all those things or do it all myself is a very attractive feature about MLM. And that's
still, even honestly knowing that your ticket to success, if you choose to stay, is to become a master recruiter, is to be a master recruiter. Because really, I mean, I think that. Look, we forgot about, there was one element about MLMs that I forgot to mention at the beginning. It's a feature that all MLMs sell in common, and I think it's a major criticism that I have of my own criticism. One of the best arguments against me, and that is, Rob, all MLMs are sell the dream, the most valuable, the sought after commodity in the world, and you're again, swear words allowed or not? Can I? All right. Should I? All right. Pooping. You're pooping all over people's dreams. What a reprehensible SOB you must be to poop on people's dreams. And I said, yeah, that is kind of a rotten thing to do. But I do it because I feel as though, let's isolate our conversation to members of the Nomad Network, have enormous potential to leverage their skills, experience, and knowledge towards more fruitful pursuits, shall we say. Now, and yeah, so those really are the 2 points. Every MLM essentially sells the same thing: the dream, freedom, financial freedom, which by the way is truly owned by, perhaps I could count maybe on the fingers of 2 hands the individuals in the world who truly have financial freedom. It bugs me that gets tossed around.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you there.
Everybody has to work, right?
Okay, well, right.
And
I'm sorry, Rob. I want to interrupt you right there just for one idea, because the idea of true financial freedom is left to those who, what's the word? I can't think of the word I'm thinking of. It's up to interpretation.
Oh yeah,
because
big time.
You can have financial freedom and make a healthy 6 figures, or you can have financial freedom and make a 7 or 8 figures. And so somebody who did not start the MLM, who may be earning 5 or 6 figures, they could be financially free based on their own understanding of that word. And so I guess the idea is, how much money do you want to make? Because if you want to make 10 figures in an MLM, yeah, it's going to require a lot of time and energy to do that, right? And the chance of you doing that is very slim, and I understand it. But for the person who is starting this opportunity, who is making only $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Why would you poo-poo that idea? Because if you own a business with the intention of becoming financially free, the chance of you being financially free owning any business, whether it's MLM or traditional, are about the same in my estimation.
You did it again, Mike. It's people in MLMs don't own businesses. And so they can try and start business, and that's one thing. But when you're being in an MLM, you have a contract sales position. You're right. I think the definition of financial freedom is vague, and it's probably purposefully vague, and it's waved out there. But whatever this dream is, it's what's being sold. And if you go back and you watch that episode on income disclosures, I showed examples from the companies that was paired with their income disclosures about the way that they present their opportunity, and this is what it offers, right? Sitting in the catbird seat, right? And yeah, I get that. That's a great dream, but it is dangled, and it is. I wonder sometimes why. I mean, there are MLMs that sell virtually everything from toys for consensual adult activity to financial products to energy plans, and all of them. I mean, the most diverse array of products, and all of them are sold in exactly the same way, by selling the dream. Selling to produce. And I wonder why. Why do they do it that way? And I think it's because it's effective. I think it's because it works. But I think that the dream is illusory, and it is an illusion. And I don't know what the true path to prosperity is, but I don't think it's this way. And some will, but the masses of people who are recruited with that opportunity dangled in front of them are going to join because they think that it's possible, and aren't going to make it. And another thing, the MLMs cannot stay in business if they cannot continually convince people to join, right? Because that's the source. That's the source of the revenue that flows.
Well, I would say the same for any business. If they can't sell their products, whether it's internally sold or if they cannot sell any other marketing situation, that business is not going to stay in business. And
but again, my employees are not 1099. They're 1099 employees, but they're not commission only contract, and they don't have to recruit. And at the end and on Friday they get paid. So they do not have a business, right? MLMers are not a business. You can compare. You try to compare an MLMer to a business, and in so doing, you commit a category error. They are different categories of things.
Okay.
Yeah, businesses can fail, and yeah, you can fail at MLM. But the only common denominator between them is the word fail. It's comparing an employee to an employer.
Well, I would say that employees can fail and be fired.
Mhm.
I would say that traditional
Right.
business owners can fail and lose everything. And I
True.
would say that somebody in MLM can also fail. And
True.
I'm going to go back to where I started with is price is lost, this distribution of people who are, or Pareto principle, people who are the 80-20 rule, right? Not everyone's going to succeed at any endeavor. And I think, Rob, the biggest difference we have is that semantic difference between whether you own a business in a traditional sense or whether you are a contractor. And I think that, yes, you can own a business from day one in a traditional sense and call yourself a business owner. And in MLM, you may not start as a business owner, but with everything that we discussed here, in almost every single category, except definitionally, you can run a successful MLM business, whether it's yours or in a traditional sense, or whether it's operating like a business, much like a franchise is operating like a business. I don't think there's any distinction. I don't see a distinction there. I just think it's a semantical difference. And my biggest, like I said, my biggest thing is MLM is not for everybody. I'm not the most successful. I'm not making 7 figures in MLM, but I position myself where I'm making a recurring income based on past efforts. And I know that if I turn the spigot on and I start recruiting again, sure, hiring people, duplicating my efforts, that I can make good money in it. That's not everyone's going to do that.
Offline, I wanted to ask you a question about what happens to that to that income. I know we could talk all night about this, but and by the way, we're about to get whacked with the storm of the century. So that's going to be exciting. We want to look at that. The franchises are often compared to MLMs, and they shouldn't be. And there's actually an important reason why. And I hate to get deep into the weeds about this, but the beloved and recently mentioned FTC has defined a difference between franchises and multi-level marketing companies. Franchises are required to engage in certain disclosures regarding locations of stores, the amount of business that they do, and a bunch of other parameters that MLMs are exempt from doing, precisely because lobbying efforts have excluded them from those requirements. So it's really what I think what has allowed MLMs to continue as they are now. In my opinion, none of this regulation should occur. If McDonald's wants to set up, if a franchisee wants to set up across the street from another McDonald's, have at. You're going to fail, but that's on you, buddy. Right? Requirements for disclosure are a sticky topic, and we could probably talk for 2 hours about that. Income disclosures are an interesting phenomenon. Contrary to some of the opinions of people who I follow in the anti-MLM community, income disclosures by MLMs are not required, and as you know that because your company does not publish one. So it sort of raises the musical question: why do any MLMs publish income disclosure statements? I can think of a reason why. Can you?
Well,
I'll tell you why.
If you would say because they're trying to sell a dream with misleading information, then that would
no. I'm close. You're getting there. Keep going, because you may get to the point that I was going to make.
Well, you go for sake of time. Just go ahead and make your point, because
okay, it's this. When at such time as they get sued in a class action by distributors saying you all misrepresented this to me, they could say the income disclosure is on our website. You didn't read it, bozo. That's on you, right? Forgive me to put it in those terms. Let me put it in more legalese terms. It reduces their exposure to litigation. That's why MLMs publish income disclosures, because they know it's not they know it's a low probability proposition, and they're being upfront and telling people. In fact, I'll even say their name. Well, I don't know. All right, Young Living, in their compliance documentation, a recruiter is required to show the income disclosure statement to a recruitee. I don't know how they prove that they've done this, but they are so afraid of class action litigation on the part of the distributors that they put this in their compliance documents. And if you don't, disclose, it's on you. So as long as somebody's going in with clear eyes and they're willing to roll the dice, knowing that the odds are stacked against them, I don't want to legally prevent them from doing it, which is why I don't think MLM should be illegal, but I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, I think we can leave it at that, because we've gone 2 hours. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, that I'd like to have the listeners kind of make their own decision. You've raised some valid points. And, I've been in the industry for many years. I've heard all of the points out there. And, I think what it comes down to right now is a semantical difference between what a true business is and, being a contractor is. But I don't think I would dissuade people from taking an opportunity if, ethically speaking, they're told up front what the risk factor is, because there's risk being an employee, there's risk being a traditional business owner, there's risk being MLM. And I think that in any endeavor, understanding the risks, knowing upfront what the risks are, and taking those chances, you're going to find success in just about any channel. I know that because there are lots of people who succeed in every kind of industry.
Yeah, I think we agree. I think we definitely agree about transparency and being clear-eyed about it. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Rob, and we can continue offline, and just we'll probably just agree to disagree. But the purpose of this show is just to expound that knowledge of things that do exist out there, and let people decide what they want to do. I found successful people in every industry and unsuccessful in everything else, and so I think we'll just leave it at that.
True. My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
All right.